And then suppose when some decision has to be taken, we apply our brain and then take decision. And if you want to predict something, whether it will happen or not, we are able to do that. So all these activities like visual perception, speech recognition, and then language translation, decision making, then perception, all these things were possible only for human being with the support of the brain. But when the concept of artificial intelligence evolved, typically they started mimicking all these activities of visual perception. They call it as computer vision, and then speech recognition, natural language processing. So different domains cropped up from the root of artificial intelligence. So for each of them, they started developing a lot of algorithms. So under this category, this artificial neural network is another approach through which we can make the machines to think like a human being, maybe for classification or prediction. So I think by end of day one and after this first session, you must have given to a basic understanding that machines will be able to think like a human being in the process of prediction or classification. So now this artificial neural network is another approach through which we can make the machines to think like a human being. So let me get into the definition of artificial intelligence. ANN is ANN shortly represented for the terminology artificial neural network. So this acronym ANN is a computing system made up of number of simple, highly connected processing elements which process information by their dynamic state response to the external input. So as we read this definition for the first time, it may appear too technical, but please don't worry. I assure you, when we discuss with the examples, you will be able to understand what exactly does this definition mean. So I'll come again with the definition. ANN is a computing system made up of number of simple, highly connected processing elements which process information by their dynamic state response to external inputs. So this is what happens when we see something. There is an external input that gets into our brain through our eye. When I listen to someone, then some input gets into my brain through my ears. When I eat something, then some taste information is being transmitted to my brain. So there are going to be lots of external inputs which will be perceived by your brain, and then that is converted into a response, a stimuli, whatever it is. So the same thing is going to happen for the machines too, with the support of artificial neural network. So it is a complex computer code written with a number of simple, highly interconnected processing elements, which is inspired by human brain structure for simulating human brain working and processing data models. So this data can be synonymously called as information. So I just want to give another information. Before the concept of artificial intelligence could take off, the scientists, mathematicians were already using neural network as a part of their problem-solving effort. So to give more information about this artificial neural network, ANN or NN are machine learning computational algorithms which are modeled after human brain. So this is the baseline for us to understand. This artificial neural network is developed by mimicking or just simulating the functionalities of a human brain. So it is a technology based on the structure of neuron inside the human brain, which consists of number of artificial neurons. As we are going to discuss on the structure of the artificial neural network, you will be able to correlate what is the similarity connectivity between biological neurons and the neurons in the artificial neural network. So it will try to create a function to map the input parameters to the desired output. So when I see something, right, based upon my knowledge or based upon my experience or based upon my preconceived perception, I am able to identify a mouse as a mouse, a chair as a chair, a table as a table, because I already have knowledge about it. So we are also going to make the machine to understand that there is going to be a relationship between the input parameters and the output that we are going to predict. So whenever we decide to go for problem solving through artificial neural network, we have to make this ANN to understand what is the relationship between the input and the output. The relationship can be either linear or non-linear, may be any type. We should make the neural network to understand the association between the input parameters and the output parameter. That is what we mean by means of the third point. It will try to create a function to map the input parameter to a desired output. So you don't get confused about creating a function. Suppose if we have y is equal to say ax plus b square, right? This is a function. So now this specifies that there is going to be a relationship between x and then y. This is what we mean by creating a function that can map the input parameter to the desired output. So any relationship can be mathematically represented by means of an expression that will form the basis for artificial neural network to understand the relationship between the input parameters and the output parameters. Am I making it clear to you all? Hope it is not overflowing. However, as we hit upon the examples, you will be able to relish these points in a much better way. Okay, so it's a simple mathematical model which is used to process nonlinear relationship between inputs and outputs in parallel like human brain does every second. So in every fraction of the second, the brain is able to process lots of information. Suppose if you get to see a person whom you have not met for a long time, so the brain immediately tries to recollect the information from its repository, and if it is possible, we are able to recollect, or probably after some time. Suppose if you want to recollect a person, may not be able to possible immediately. Probably after a few hours, we may be able to do that because the brain is trying hard to get the information from the brain. So now this diagram will make you understand what is the association or what is the commonality between biological neural network and this is the artificial neural network. So I think this diagram is quite familiar to every one of us because we tried hard to reproduce this in the science examination. What is meant by this dendrites, then axons, all the stuff. So this is a typical representation of a neuron. So here you have a set of inputs, a set of output, and then you have the processing element that is axon. So let us not get into the biological aspects of this natural neural network. And we are familiar, let us presume that we are familiar with this. So here you have three components: input parameters, processing component, and the output. So in the similar way, this artificial neural network is modeled by having a set of neurons to represent the input layer, and then in between you have a component called middle layer. The middle layer can be either a single layer or it can be more than one layer, multi-layer, and then all these components are being connected to an output layer, which is going to give us a classification output or prediction output as required for a problem to be solved. So here, the takeaway point for every one of us is, this is going to have three components. One is the input layer, then the middle layer is called as the hidden layer, and the last one is the output layer. So what do you understand from whatever we have learned in terms of the definition? Now, whatever be the input parameter, for each input parameter, we have to fix one neuron. Then we are going to make the machine to understand the relationship between the input parameter and the output value to be predicted or classified by looking into the patterns that are hidden in the input parameter. So the processing is being done by the hidden layer. This hidden layer will be able to come out with the relationship between the input and the output layer by formulating a mapping function. Well, so again, this diagram will make you understand what is the relationship between the input parameters and the output parameters when we talk about artificial neural network. So here, a neuron takes inputs, right, and does some mathematical operation with those inputs and does some processing and then produces the output. So what is the mathematical operation that is done with all these input parameters? See here, first, each input is multiplied by its weight. So when we have this artificial neural network, you can have n number of inputs, and for each input, the model will assign a weight factor. So let us call for x1, the weight is w1, and for x2, the weight component is w2. So now we have to go in for the multiplication of the inputs with the respective weighing factors. So the expression becomes x1 multiplied with w1 and x2 multiplied with w2. And after that, we have to formulate an expression out of these two because you have two inputs. We are going to combine them. So next, all the weighted inputs are added together, right? So we are going to add them as x1 multiplied by w1 plus x2 multiplied with w2. Now, in addition to the input values that we have taken for this problem solving, which are x1 and x2, now we have to add an additional component called b that stands for bias. So what is the significance of this bias? By chance, if we select the weighing factors W1 and W2 to be a 0, right, then it is needless to mention this term will become 0 and this term will become 0. Ultimately, the neural network will not have any data to proceed or process further. So to avoid this confusion, we normally initialize this bias with a non-zero. So at any point of time after the first iteration, the network will have some non-zero value with which it can proceed to the next level of iteration. So next, all the weighted inputs are added together with a component called bias that is represented by B. So now we are formulating a function. So this is going to be the mapping function, and the output is going to be calculated through this expression. Finally, the sum is passed through an activation function used to turn an unbounded input into an output, into a discrete desirable output that has a predictable form. Now, whatever be the value that you get out of the activation function is going to give us a hint about the prediction or classification process that we do. So whatever that we have got in the form of x1 into w1 plus x2 into w2 plus b is going to be taken as a mapping function, and hence the whole expression becomes y is equal to function of this expression. So what is y? Y is the value that we are going to predict or classify. So the value of y is going to be computed with respect to x and y, I mean x1 and x2 with respect to the multiplications that we do with the respective weighing factors W1 and W2. So let us not worry much about what happens internally, and this is highly abstracted from the user's view when you really use these models, but still for the understanding point of view, we have to know what happens internally, and that is the whole objective of the session. Okay, so now I can see here, just see the simulation, and you have a set of input that is coming in, right, that is given some weightage. So it finds the sum of those expressions, some bias values being added. Now this represents a mapping function as designated by that expression x1 plus w1, x1 into w1 plus x2 representation. This is just a mapping function between x value and y value. In the similar way, depending upon the relationship and the association of the input parameters and the output parameter, a function is being formulated and the output is being got. So here, these are the inputs. These arrows are the inputs. Weight is given. Then you find the sum of products of input parameter and the respective bias, then bias is added. Then we go for activation function. Activation function is the one, please remember. And if we have unbounded input or processed value, that should get converted into manageable output value, which is used for prediction or classification. So let me just, brush up on these points. So neural network can be used to solve problems related to any kind of data, and it can be, say, tabular data, or it can be an image as such, or even it can be a text, because we can use this artificial neural network for handle any type of data. So that is the kind of freedom that is ensured with when you go for artificial neural network. So then it is capable of learning any nonlinear function. See, when there is any relationship between the input parameters and the output parameter, which is not linear in nature, then artificial intelligence has the potential ability to come out with identifying the nonlinear relationship between the inputs and the output. So this artificial neural network is otherwise known as universal function approximator. So why it is called as an approximator? This model has the capability to approximate the association between the input parameters and the output parameter. So we call this as approximator. Now this approximator, artificial neural network, can work on tabular data, image data, text data, any kind of data. So it is able to formulate a function approximator for all type of data, and hence it is called as universal function approximator. So this model has the capability to learn weights that map any input to the respective output. So the input is given, output is given, the model learns the association between the inputs and the output. So the learning is going to be extrapolated when you want to do the prediction on the unknown or a new data or real-time data. So then the third point is one of the main reasons behind this universal approximation is the activation function. So when you learn about artificial neural network, this activation function becomes a very important component, because without activation function, we cannot make the model to perform its function. So what's meant by an activation function? This activation function introduces a kind of nonlinear properties to the network, because we have to identify the nonlinear association between the input parameters and the output parameter. So this helps the neural network to learn complex relationship between the input and the output. So why do we call this as complex relationship? Suppose if we have, say, y is equal to x squared, this is a linear relationship. But when we talk about, say, a prediction of a share market, or predicting, say, value of a house, or predicting age of a person, or predicting what a person can talk. When we just look into the text messages, before we could start typing, it gives a lot of suggestions. So now, how best we can get the suggestions? It is all decided by understanding the complex relationship between what is the input and what is the expected output. So this kind of neural network are able to learn any kind of complex relationship between the input and the output. So this is the advantage which is performed the support of activation function. So then the output of each neuron is the activation of weighted sum of input. This is needless to mention, because already we have seen the expression, how the expression is being formulated. Okay, so this diagram again will really help us to understand what happens internally in an artificial neural network for the given inputs and for the outputs that we get. So the inputs are being called as external input. Let us assume this is the neural network which is designed for image classification, where the images are to be classified into either cat or car or dog. Right. So let us assume this neural network is capable of classifying cat or car or a doll, right? So now you have the input layers, then you have the neural network, and these are the hidden layers. And the one in the red color, right, all the neurons. So this depicts the input layer. One in the blue, light blue, this is the hidden layer. And the one in the dark blue, these neurons depict the output layer. So let us not worry what really happens inside. As of now, let us just understand you have a set of inputs to be taken by the artificial neural network model, and then you have a set of hidden layers for processing that gives you the output. So when the model really works well, the model will be able to predict cat as a cat, car as a cat, and doll as a doll. And if the model is not working well, no worry, we have to go for fine-tuning the model so that the classification or prediction becomes more accurate than what it gives at any point in time. So now let us just look into the capabilities of artificial neural network. What happens if there is not going to be any activation function? So if this is not available, then you cannot make an artificial neural network to come out with either prediction or classification. So the network only learns the linear function and can never learn complex relationship as far as the given data is concerned. So how are we going to make a neural network to understand complex or nonlinear relationship between the inputs and the output? So that is done with the support of activation function. That's why it is called as an activation function is called as powerhouse of neural network. I think when we talk about human system, we call this mitochondria as the powerhouse. So like that, this activation function is the one that just speaks about this neural network, right? We just call it as a powerhouse. Let us see how it happens. So now it is used to determine the output of the neural network, like yes or no, right? Suppose if you want to develop a model which can identify a person's face, whether it is a human face or not, it is going to give the output as yes or no. So it maps the resulting values between either 0 and 1 or -1 and +1. So now this depends upon the kind of function that is being conceived by the neural network. So the value may lie between 0 and 1, or it can be between -1 and 1. So this depends upon, sheerly on the relationship between the inputs and the output. Let us not worry about it. So whatever be the value that you get as the intermediary in a neural network, this is going to get converted into desirable output values with the support of activation function. So what are the most popular activation functions that we use? It is sigmoid or logistic, tanh, and then ReLU, where ReLU is an acronym for rectified linear unit. So let us just see this diagram. This is about take the inputs, right, and multiply with the respective neurons weight that you already know. We have seen the expression, and then we got to add this bias value, and this is to ensure that the value doesn't become zero at any point of time. And then feed the results, whatever be the results that we get out of this multiplication of neurons with the respective weights, and then addition of this bias, and this information will be fed into the activation function. So this activation function will produce a value, and that will be used by the model for prediction. So take the output and then transmit to the next layer of the neural network. So this process can happen once or many times depending upon the requirement. So now let me just, throw some light on the possible activation functions. So sigmoid is a very common kind of function that we use. So just take this as a common understanding. For each and every activation function, there is a formula, as you all know. So this is a formula for computing the sigmoid function. When you really work with the model, you don't have to worry about what kind of expression are we supposed to use, how to assign value, because everything is well taken care of by the model. You have to specify what kind of activation function are you interested in. So when you use the sigmoid function, this formula is being used. So the value that it is going to, convert from the unbounded value to the bounded value will follow this pattern, right, between 0 and 1. So this is going to create a kind of smooth gradient. This is kind of gradient that you can see in the diagram. So that prevents a kind of, undesirable jump with respect to the output value. So it is going to be a kind of smooth transition between 0 and 1. So the output values bound between 0 and 1, normalizing the output of each and every neuron. So whatever be the results that we get are going to get converted between 0 and 1. And then the model will be able to take a kind of prediction with respect to if the value is 0, what should be the inference, and if the value is 1, what should be the inference. So with the support of this activation function, we may be able to go for clear predictions. For x above 2 or below -2 tends to bring y values, that is the predictions of the edge of the curve, very close to 1 and 0. Don't worry much about all these kind of -1, +1. For any given input value, the activation function is going to give us the corresponding desirable output value. So that value is going to be used for prediction or classification. So what are the disadvantages of this sigmoid function? Sometimes it is very high or very low for the values of x. And there is almost no change in the prediction, causing a vanishing gradient problem. So here in this case, you can see a gradient, right? In some cases, depending upon the characteristics of the data that we give, which is not able to make the model do the prediction well, this gradient may vanish, and that problem is called as vanishing gradient. If that is the case, probably this function may not be able to give us the desired results. So this suffers from the problem of vanishing gradient. So output is not zero-centered, because it is sometimes when you have the problem of vanishing gradient, then it is not a smooth transition. Then it is not going to be zero-centered. Then it is computationally expensive. So at this point of time, I just want to make you understand one thing. Now, when you have a collection of input data, the input data will be given to the model. The model will try to understand the pattern hidden in the data. Based upon its understanding, it is going to produce a result. Like, we should not be carried away by a wrong notion that when we use artificial intelligence models, it is supposed to give the maximum accuracy, but it is not the case as we get into the reality. Because one thing we have to understand when we work with artificial intelligence is that the behavior of the model is highly triggered or influenced by nature of the data that we give. Suppose if we have a data where the randomness is very high, in the sense that when there is a randomness, then suppose if we are given a set of data which is highly random, then we may not be able to come to a conclusion about the data as such. For instance, suppose if you want to predict the performance of a student, right, based upon his or her past performance. If the student shows a consistent kind of, a recording with respect to his or her score in the CFA assignment and all other tests, right, then a teacher will be able to make a kind of prediction about what will be his or her score in the next year. And if a student is about around 60 or around 70 or around 80 or around 90, we may be able to make a prediction because there is not randomness in the data as such. In addition to that, it follows a pattern. And please remember, artificial intelligence models works only when the data contains or reflects a pattern as such. Now, let me take a student who takes a 0 in the first test, then takes about 90 in the second test, and takes, say again, 10 in the third test. Now, a teacher may not be able to come to a conclusion whether the student will be able to get a pass minimum or 90 when he or she goes for ESE. In the similar way, when we talk about this artificial intelligence models, only when the data is persistent, only when the data is, say, highly distributed and diversified, the models work literally well. In other cases, now, we cannot blame the model as such because it is the feature of the data which doesn't allow the artificial intelligence model to go for predictions. So this is the next one. This is called as tanh or hyperbolic tangent. So now the representation of data depiction is going to be like this. So now this involves even negative value as such. So now the advantage of this is zero centered and making it easier model to map the inputs to the respective output. So now when you have this kind of proper pattern, then the model will be able to come to a conclusion. Suppose if the values are 1, what should be the inference? If the values are 0, what should be the inference? If the values are -1, what should be the inference? So that is the reason why we feel that any kind of activation function that we use should be zero centered to make predictions based upon the range of values that we get. So it is making it easier for the model input to have strongly negative, then neutral, as well as strongly positive values as depicted by this model. So but for this difference, it appears more like a sigmoid function. So what is the disadvantage? As we discussed in the case of sigmoid function, this also suffers from vanishing gradient. If this gradient is not present, it is not possible for the model to predict. So because it suffers from the problem of vanishing gradient, so the output is not going to be zero centered, and then it becomes computationally expensive when you go for the convergence of solutions for a given data. And this is one of the interesting activation functions which we normally use, that is ReLU. Now you can see here, now it is going to be between this is the representation of or depiction of the model that is created by ReLU. So it is computationally efficient because it allows the network to converge very quickly. So this is one of the prime concerns when we talk about artificial intelligence models. The activation function that we use must make the model to converge at the earliest. What is converging? Now it has to go to the optimal value, and beyond certain point, either it should remain as a constant or the efficiency should drop down. So then regarding the nonlinear, although it looks like a linear function, ReLU has a direct derivative function and allows for backpropagation. So this backpropagation is a kind of an extension of working with artificial neural network, wherein you take the output and then again pass it on to the neural network for further learning. So once you are familiar with the first level of the models, then you can explore the models with backpropagation or forward feed. So the disadvantages, this is the pattern that is normally to be produced by ReLU, but at times, suppose if the data is not supporting this kind of pattern of representation, this suffers from the problem of dying ReLU problem. That is, it is not able to produce this kind of pattern. When the input approaches 0 or becomes negative, then the gradient of the functions becomes 0. So when there is no gradient, it is not possible for us to distinguish between what is the upper limit and what is the lower limit. So it is essentially important when you talk about activation function, there should be a kind of gradient that specifies the upper limit and lower limit of the data that we are going to use for predictions. So then if that becomes, the gradient of the function becomes 0, the network may not be able to perform the backpropagation, or it may not be able to learn from the data that you give through the process of training. So this is a variant of ReLU that is called as leaky ReLU. This is taken as a kind of solution for the problems that we face in ReLU. What are the advantages? It prevents the ReLU from suffering from the problem of dying, right? So this provides a solution for dying ReLU, and this variation of ReLU has a small positive slope. You can see here as a small positive slope in the negative area, so it does be able to do back propagation even for negative input values. So in the previous case, there was no slope that depicts in the negative region, but this has the advantage. So with leaky ReLU, if the gradient is lost, you can just change the activation function to leaky ReLU, and then you can get it done. So this provides a solution for the problem of dying ReLU. Otherwise, the functionality is same as that of ReLU. The disadvantages, the result is not consistent. So please try to understand only when the data is good enough, if it is compact, if it is comprehensive, only then the model will be able to understand the pattern. So if there is something wrong with the data, then probably we have to change the data. And if the data is intact and the model is not working well, then we have to change the model. Then this is softmax. This is yet another activation function. So the advantage of this is able to handle multiple classes. Suppose if you want to classify like cat or a dog or a doll or a horse, in such cases we use only softmax, which is used for multi-class classification. So this normalizes the output for each class between 0 and 1, and then divides by their sum, giving the probability of the input values being very specific for each and every class. Probably like I can give you an example a little later and then try to make you understand how these kind of activation functions work. So then it is useful for output neurons. Like typically softmax is used only for the output layer. I mean for neural network that need to classify inputs into multiple categories. So I'll give an example so you will be able to understand. So to speak about the challenges with neural network, while solving an image classification problem, for instance, by using artificial neural network, the first step is to convert a 2D image into one-dimensional vector prior to training the model. I will show you an example how 2D can be converted into 1D. For time being, please reserve your understanding about this conversion, and please take the point that 2D image should be converted into one-dimensional image when you go for training. And what are the drawbacks of doing this? The number of trainable parameters increase drastically with an increase in the size of the image. Now let me imagine I have an image of size say 3 cross 3. I mean I have 3 rows and 3 columns representing an image. So ideally I have 9 pixels. When I have 9 pixels, each and every pixel is going to serve as the input for the artificial neural network I'm going to use for image identification or image classification or image recognition. When I have an image of size 3 cross 3, the number of inputs are 9. And when I have an image of size, say 10 cross 10, then the input becomes 100. You can imagine having 100 neurons in the input layer and then combining them with the hidden layer, it becomes highly complicated. So in such cases, when you work with images, and then with respect to a neural network, it becomes highly kind of complex phenomenon to work with such kind of large size images. So to overcome this problem, how are you going to manage, right? So ANN loses the spatial features of an image, and spatial features refers to arrangement of pixels in an image. When you have an image, suppose if I take my photograph for instance, so I can identify where the eyes are, where my nose is, where my mouth is, where my chin is, because it represents a spatial representation. When I take, a photograph of any other person's image, I mean the face, a passport size photograph, then the eyes are going to be in the same place where it is, seen in my photograph. Almost there will be a kind of similarity. Now, this kind of relationship between the pixels is called as spatial relationship or spatial feature. So we are going to work on the spatial feature with respect to neural network. And then another common problem in all this neural network is already we have discussed vanishing or exploding gradient. So the gradient may either vanish or it may just go out of control. In both of the cases, we must be able to provide a solution by controlling this problem by using the various means. So this problem is associated with the back propagation algorithm, and the weights of the neural networks are updated periodically, continuously through this back propagation algorithm by finding the gradient. So you can see here, these are the inputs, then this is the hidden layer output, as I told you. Now, whatever with the output that you get, this depicts feed forward and this depicts back propagation. So when you just do the processing, it is from the input to the output, it is called as feed forward. When you take the output and then try to fine tune the weighing factors and rework on the data based upon the output, this is called as back propagation approach. So now you can see here, you have a collection of, two images. Then these images, pixels are being fed into the neural network and they are getting read. And then ultimately it is going to identify either of these images as either cat or dog if it works well, or it may misclassify the images. So CNN learns the filters automatically without mentioning it explicitly. And these filters help in extracting the most essential important features which are present in the input, which are sufficiently enough for classification or prediction. So what is the understanding now as we talk about convolutional neural network? Now we are slowly moving on to CNN from ANN, because CNN is the most appropriate vehicle to handle images for classification or prediction. So what is the advantage of the CNN? Instead of using the image as such, CNN is going to help us to extract the essential features. So instead of using the entire image as the input for the artificial neural network, we are going to use only the selected, hand-picked, handcrafted features, which will serve as the input for the artificial neural network. So CNN learns filters automatically without mentioning it explicitly. These filters help in extracting the right and relevant features from the given input data, input image data. So this overcomes the curse of dimensionality reduction, dimensionality in neural network, and the CNN comes as a savior to assure dimensionality reduction on high dimensional images. So what we understand by dimensionality reduction, when I have an image of size say 10 cross 10 or 100 cross 100, and instead of taking each and every pixel, the CNN will perform feature extraction, and ultimately the extracted features may be of size say 5 cross 5 or 3 cross 3. So ultimately the size is going to get reduced, and hence it is going to really help us to work with this model in a better way by reducing the complexity. At the same time, the CNN is going to help us to stop working on the unnecessary data. What I mean to say here is, suppose if you see this image, for every image there is going to be a background, right? So the background also becomes a part of the image when we are working. But ultimately, when an object has to be identified, this background doesn't have any significance at all. So instead of working on the entire image, let us apply CNN, extract the essential features, which is going to be much, much lesser than the actual size of the image, then convert the 2D representation of the feature into one dimension, then give this as the input for the neural network. That becomes possible, right? So hope I'm making it clear to you. You can see here, CNN learns the filters automatically without mentioning it explicitly, right? Just read these points. Thank you. So here, CNN learns the filters automatically without mentioning it explicitly, point number one. So these filters help in extracting the right as well as relevant features from the input data. Then the third point is, CNN is the ultimate solution for dimensionality reduction. So CNN is able to capture the spatial features from the images. Underline the spatial features, you will understand later. The spatial features refer to arrangement of pixels and the relationship between these pixels in an image. So they also help us in identifying the object accurately, the location of the object, because when we go for object detection with respect to say traffic control software or a traffic monitoring system, you have to identify where a car is, what type of car it is, and whether it is on the right track or not. We have to identify the location, and identifying a location is being called as localization of an image. So the spatial features refer to arrangement of pixels and the relationship between them in an image. So this may help in identifying the object accurately, the location of the object, as well as the relationship between the other objects in the image. So this is all about, working with CNN. So you can see the one on the top is the filter, at the bottom you have the image. So the filter is going to just sail through or skim through or slide through the entire image. At every point of time, the CNN will get associated with a portion of the image that we call a sub-image, and then it goes on and on. So CNN also follows the concept of parameter sharing, right? Let us talk about this parameter sharing. A single filter is applied across different parts of an input image that produces a feature map. See, now when we talk about parameter sharing, each and every input pixel is being called as a parameter. So when we try to apply this filter, and we may work on the principle of overlapping filter or non-overlapping filter. And so the entire image is going to be managed by a CNN, and that CNN is going to help us in extracting the features. Well, there was some noise in between. Anyway, this works on the principle of parameter sharing, and a single filter is applied across the different parts of the input image. You will understand all these things when I move on to an example. So what are the common features, or as we compare between neural network and convolutional neural network, that we shortly call as ANN and CNN, with respect to these properties? And with respect to data, ANN can work only on tabular data, and whereas CNN can handle images, because this CNN is an extension of artificial neural network, and this is ideally suitable for handling images. And parameter sharing, ANN doesn't do parameter sharing, whereas CNN does. And this ANN doesn't work on the principle of, or it doesn't work on the property of spatial relationship. And because image is augmented with a spatial relationship and features properties, for CNN it is yes. And then this ANN does suffer from vanishing as well as exploding gradient. It is the same for CNN as well. Then learning pattern, in the case of ANN it is manual, and in the case of CNN it is automatic. So now the intuition behind CNN, and nowadays an application of CNN, the applications of CNN are growing boundless. A simple application to say is, we can go for image captioning or video captioning, wherein if an image is given, then the model will be able to identify each and every object, right? A chair or a cake, whether the boy is standing or sitting. So then it will come out with a caption saying that a happy little boy standing on a chair. So happy is an object, it's a kind of adjective that speaks about feeling of a person. So it may be able to come out whether a person is happy or unhappy, sad or sober. It will be able to come out with the corresponding representation. So okay. So now this is again an illustration to make us understand. You have the input images here, and you have a collection of, let us imagine this to be an ANN. To be very specific, CNN, then it will be able to come out with, this is the model that will fetch the texture. This model will fetch the color, shape, as well as size. So for a given image, we may be able to come out with the output, say, what is the texture? If it is apple, it is going to be smooth. If it is pineapple, it is going to be rough. So what is its texture? What is the color? What is its shape? Whether it is having a geometrical shape or not, irregular shape, and what is its size? Estimating the volume. So all these kind of features can be extracted from a given image by using CNN. This is just to make you understand what will be the potential and applications of CNN. So this diagram will be able to make us understand exactly what happens internally in a CNN model. Let us assume this is the input, that is a car image, right? So this image is going to be processed with a convolutional filter. You can see here there is a small filter, right? So this filter will be traced across or slide across the entire image, and this sliding of the filter over the image will be able to extract the essential features of the car. So that is done with the help of this convolution operation, followed by ReLU. You know what is ReLU? It is an activation function. After that, we have to go for pooling. Little later, I'll explain to you what is meant by pooling. Then this is one set of operation: convolution, activation function, and then pooling. When I want to still reduce the feature dimension, or when I want to minimize the dimension of the feature that we have extracted out of the first ANN or CNN, then this, because we apply convolutional operation, let us specifically call this as CNN. So again, I can go in for another set of operation. Again, we apply convolution, we apply activation function, then we do pooling. You can see from the representation, as we progress further towards right, the dimension is getting reduced. So when the dimension is reduced, it is needless to mention, the features that we extract from the images do decrease, that is leading to dimensionality reduction. So what is the advantage of dimensionality reduction? So as we have less number of features, then the complexity of the ANN or CNN is going to be lesser. So after that, we flatten. This is, here you can see it is represented as flattened. Now this is the feature represented in two-dimensional format, and that will get converted into one-dimensional format. This is what we call as converting the features from two-dimension to one dimension. So this is getting flattened, and then we go for fully connected artificial neural network layer, and then it will give you a multi-class classifier to check whether this is a car, a truck, or van, or bicycle, or any kind of image. So from this you can understand, this is the input layer, and here you have the output layer, and in between this is called as feature extraction as well as feature learning, and the classification process takes place with respect to the CNN. So please try to understand, in the case of convolutional neural network, the convolution operation happens as a separate entity. After you finish with this convolution operation, once the feature is extracted, then we go in for neural network. So this is feature learning and this is classification. So now, you know what is meant by this convolution. You know what is activation function, and let me explain to you what is meant by pooling. And this pooling, there are different types of pooling. Let me just explain you with respect to this diagram. Let us imagine you have an input image, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You have an image of size 7 cross 7, and imagine you have a filter of size 3 cross 3. You can see this is a little elevated, and you are going to perform convolution operation. You take a filter of size 3 cross 3, and that is being virtually superimposed on image of this region. And when you take a portion of the image, that is called a sub-image. So a sub-image of size 3 cross 3 is taken, that is convolved with a filter of size 3 cross 3, and the operation on this is going to give me an information that is going to be called as one value. So the same operation will be repeated, as many times as possible with respect to the size of the image and size of the filter. See, at last we have come to this point, right? And we process each and every position and come to this point. So this value is going to be stored here. Now, you have, see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are more than about 10 such, stacked features that you can see. Now you have to understand, when I have one feature being represented by this, say, rectangle, this refers to extracting feature of this image by using one filter, right? When I have 4 such features, that means that I have used 4 different filters, which will fetch us different types of feature representation. So that means that when I look into this diagram, I have to understand I have used these many number of filters, and each filter type will fetch me one feature, and this collection put together is called as feature map, right? So this is what you call as convolution layer. And then after convolution, now this is done with respect to striding and then padding. What is meant by striding? Stride refers to in what fashion am I going to shift the convolutional filter. Whether I'm going to be, it is going to be, say, overlapping or non-overlapping. Whether I make the stride as 1 or stride as 2 or stride as 3, it is decided depending upon our requirement. And then padding, as you know, when you apply convolutional neural network on an image, ultimately it is going to work on dimensionality reduction. On some occasions where I don't want to lose the information of the image, and when I want to retain the original size of the image, then I have to go for this feature called padding, where I give as many zeros as possible on four sides of the image. Then convolution operation is being performed. So when we do so, because we are augmenting the size of the image, objectively to sustain or to retain the original size of the image. So we go for zero padding. There are different types of zero padding available. So convolution operation can be augmented with striding as well as padding. And then we have to decide about the activation function, say ReLU layer. Then as we talk about pooling, there are two simple variants, max pooling and min pooling. Even we can do average pooling. And then after you finish this pooling, I'll let you know what is the purpose of this pooling little shortly. And then the last one is a fully connected layer. So here, the selection of number of kernels. Now, I just want to draw your attention. This convolutional filter can be called as kernel. It can be called as, say, window. It can be called as a mask. So each of this refers only to the filter. So the selection of number of kernels, that is number of filters, determine the number of feature map activation output produced by the convolution layer. If I want to have 5 number of feature map, I have to use 5 different filters. This also I will show you with an example. So this is the input I have, right? A, B, C, D up to say K, L, and then I use this kernel just to make you understand how the filter works. I request you to focus on this. Suppose if I have an image of size 4 cross 4 and if I have a kernel of size 2 cross 2, I'm going to work on A multiplied with W plus B multiplied with X plus C multiplied with Y and then F multiplied with Z. Right, as we multiply this, this is going to form one component. Likewise, I can do with the next 4, that gives me this. I can again come down and then do with the next one. If it is going to be non-overlapping, if I just slide it by one column alone, then it is going to be BW plus CX plus FY and then GZ. And this is how we get, with respect to the combination of subimages and the filters, you get as many features as possible. So this is an example. Suppose if I have this, consider an input image of 5 cross 5 with a filter size 3 cross 3. We take this 1 multiplied with 0, 2 multiplied with, let me take this, 2 with 0, then 0 with 0. We multiply all of them together and we get the result as say 1 here, right, for this combination. So like this, you have to, move the window and work further. For each and every kind of computation, you get one data which is put here, and whatever we get out of this convolution operation is called as a feature map or output image or feature image. Now we have to understand, now we perform, this is taken as function 1 and this is taken as function 2 and this is function 3. Any convolution operation is referred to as applying 2 functions to get the third function, right? This is input image convolution that gives you the next one. See, it can slide like this and accordingly you get the corresponding images. So this is the final one. So now you may be able to calculate what will be the size of the output image by following this formula. And this IH stands for height of the input image, FH stands for height of the filter, and plus 1 comma, W stands for the width, number of rows that we have minus number of rows we have in the filter plus 1. So it is needless to mention, it's very vivid that the size of the input image is 5 cross 5 and the size of filter is 3 cross 3. So it is ideally 5 minus 3 plus 1 comma 5 minus 3 plus 1, that gives you 3 cross 3, which is ultimately the size of the feature map or output image. So by taking this 5 cross 5 and 3 cross 3, we get the image of size 3 cross 3. And now you can understand how dimensionality reduction takes place, right? So this 5 cross 5 has effortlessly got reduced into 3 cross 3. So the same thing. And here we just make a mention about stride. Suppose if stride is equal to 1, right, it happens like this. See the previous example that we discussed, that is for stride is equal to 1, right? So in this case, we just start with A, B, C, D, then we do with B, C, then F, G, then we do with D, CD, GF. So stride is equal to 1 means we just move by one position. But in the second case that we have taken here, stride is equal to 2. So you can see how it is moving. At any point of time, it skips either 2 rows or 2 columns. So for this also we can calculate by going for this formula, IH minus FH divided by S. You compute this value, then add 1 to this, that will give you. For instance, if you take this, it is 5 cross 5, 3 cross 3. So 5 minus 3 divided by 2, right? 5 minus 3 is 2. Stride is equal to 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. So you get 2 rows as well as 2 columns. So this is an illustration of a padding, right? You can see here, zeros are being padded across the rows and columns, top, bottom. So when we apply this padding, what happens now, despite this convolution operation, it is able to produce the output as such. So whatever was the output image size, 5 cross 5, that has got retained here as 5 cross 5. This can be calculated by means of this formula. I think you can do it yourself. So as we talk about the spooling, right, we have finished with, you can just recollect. So we have done with convolution filter. I just told you what is meant by a stride. I told you what is padding. Now I'm moving on to pooling. So now, when I have an image of size, say, of this, right, 5 cross 5 as the feature, I don't want all these features. I can do away with the unwanted information. So again, I'm going to divide this output image into small sub-images, out of which I will take either minimum value or maximum value or sum or average. That will help me to extract the features in a better way. For instance, suppose if I have an image of, this is the image. Now, out of this, right, I'm going to take, if I'm going to take the filter sizes, say 2 cross 2, right, the first 2 rows and 2 columns, if I take, out of this, when I apply max pooling, I have to choose a number between 1, 2, 2, 0, out of which the maximum value is 2, so I get this. So likewise, I can move further between these numbers, it is again 2. And between these numbers, it is 1. So likewise, you can just go for, finding the maximum value when you do the process of pooling. And again, likewise, this size can be computed by using this formula. So you can see here, when stride is equal to 1, it is 3 cross 3. When stride is equal to 2, the size is still getting reduced. Okay, so now let us move on to fully connected layer or dense layer. So the neurons in this layer are fully connected with each other with respect to each and every neuron. So we call this as fully connected layer. Already we just started with input image. Then we discussed about convolutional operation, convolution layer. Then explained to you what is meant by activation function. After that, during the convolution operation, we should know what is meant by stride and what is meant by filter size and what is meant by padding, and then how to apply pooling. So only when we are thorough with all these things, these are going to serve as the hyperparameter when you work with artificial neural network. And we must be able to fine tune the model by modifying these factors. So once we are done with the max pooling, then you have the feature map in your hand. So that is going to serve as the input for the fully connected layer. So we call this as a dense layer. So neurons in this layer have full connectivity with all neurons in the preceding as well as succeeding layer. So this is like just matrix multiplication. As you know, we have seen the formula already. So this is used to map the representation between input and the output. So now what happens from the image, we have extracted the features, and that feature is going to be fed as the input for the artificial neural network. And now this network is going to find the non-linear relationship between the inputs that we have given and the output to be predicted. So this can be followed by convolution layer, pooling layer, and even after flattening, that is converting 2D into one-dimensional representation. So when do you have this fully connected layer as the last component after we perform convolution, after we perform pooling, after we flatten the 2D into one, we use this. So fully connected layer, shortly called as FC layer, is similar to that of convolution layer, but the difference is it is fully convolved with all neurons in the preceding or succeeding layers when we do forward as well as backward propagation. So the same thing, the CNN layer convolution is being done. You know what is now striding, you know what is padding, you know what is ReLU layer, max pooling, min pooling, and now this is going to be fed into the fully connected layer. This already I have shown you this diagram just as a recap I have given you. So now quickly I'll just say through an example that will make you understand how the CNN works. So imagine I'm going to construct a model for identification of or recognition of this image as say X or this image as O, for instance. So I'm going to do this with the support of CNN. So at the end of this, the CNN should recognize this as X or not, and this O as O or not. So now the input that I'm going to give later may be of little distorted, not same as that of this, because we do not know. When I write X, I write like this. Probably during some other time, I can write X in a different format. So these two can be other inputs with the help of which I can test whether the model works well or not. And again, these two represent the letter O. Now let me imagine this is the input representation, right? With the background information is represented by -1, and the X component, that is the pixels which represent X, is being represented as 1s, right? So it is it's very simple for us to understand background with -1 and the X representation in the form of 1. Now what are we supposed to do with this? Number one, we have to select a convolutional filter, and then we have to extract the features. To extract the features, we have to decide how many number of filters are we supposed to use. The number of filters that we decide to use concerns only the number of features that you want to extract out of this input. So now let me start with a filter of this pattern, wherein I have ones here in these positions because I have to extract X. I mean, X should be recognized as X when I extract this pattern as well as this pattern as well as the middle one. When I combine all these features together, it represents X. So now I take this 3 cross 3 where I have the filter being arranged like this. So the diagonal elements are being represented as 1, the rest of them are being represented as -1. So what am I going to do? I take the input image. This is to perform the convolution operation. So line up the filters. We can decide later how many number of filters are we going to use. So you know the convolution operation is multiplication of the respective positions and them adding together. So I take this 1, -1, -1, -1, 1, -1, -1, -1, and 1. And this is going to be respectively multiplied by taking a subimage shown by this blue color box. So each and every position is being multiplied. I add them together. That will give you the result as 1 that is going to be stored here. Right? So point-wise multiplication, adding them together, and the final value is going to be stored in the respective corresponding position. This is the feature map that we are going to construct by the process of convolution operation. Okay, so we do this. Now we are going to go for take this and then try to apply on the entire image. You know how this is going to be done. Now let me take this as say, let's just take this example. 1 multiplied with 1, that will give you 1. -1 multiplied with -1, that will give us 1 again. Then -1 with -1, 1 again. Then in this row, -1 multiplied with -1, then +1 multiplied with +1 will give you 1, 1, 1, and likewise here also. So you get 9 ones out of the convolution operation. Add them together, divided by 9, that will give you 1. So this is the value that we have got out of this computation. Like this, it is going to be done for the entire image, and hence we just calculate values like this. And after that, because at the end of each and every filter operation, you're going to get the data being shown like this. So now we are going to work with another kind of filter, right, which is going to help us to extract this feature. And here it is in terms of the diagonal representation. This is a kind of, this looks like a city block, right? So we have to extract this as well. For that purpose, I'm going to go for 3 different types of filters. This is the first one that we've already discussed. Now to extract this pattern of X as well as to extract this pattern of X that lies in the middle of this X, I'm going to use 3 different filters. This is what we call as using multiple filters to extract multiple features of a given image. So this is after the first pass, that is after using the first filter, we have got this kind of information, the feature map. And now in the input image, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it was 9 cross 9, and the feature is now 2, 4, 6, 7 cross 7, right? There is a small dimensionality reduction. So likewise, I'm going to get one feature with the support of this filter. This is the second feature. You can, I think, easily distinguish between this filter and this filter. So this will extract these edges, right? So for this also you have another set of features, and with respect to this filter, I get another set of features. So by using 3 filters, the ANN or CNN will fetch you 3 different types of feature map. So when we have this feature map, what should we do next? We have to go for applying ReLU layer. That is, we have to apply activation function. So this ReLU is going to apply this concept. You can see here in the inserted box. Now f of x, I mean the value to be computed, that is going to be 0 if the value, that is x value, happens to be less than 0. That is, if it is a negative value, that should be taken as 0. And if it is anything greater than or equal to 0, then it should be retained as it is, right? So all the negative values are going to get converted into 0. Any value between 0 and positive will be retained as such. So this is the activation function that we use. So this rectified linear unit transform, it's a transformation function which is used for activating the respective nodes. And what is the purpose of activation function? If we have kind of values like this, we may not be able to come to any kind of conclusion or prediction. So for this purpose, we apply this activation function, which can convert the unbounded data into a bounded data, which can be used by the model for prediction or identification or classification. So a transform function only activates a node if the input is above a certain quantity, while the input is below 0, and the output is 0 even the output rises above certain quantity. I think those who have already worked with threshold will be able to understand. We just set a threshold. Anything above the threshold will be assumed in one fashion. Anything equal to or below threshold will be given another representation. Same thing is being done here. So by we just apply the condition, all negative values are being defined as 0, and anything equal to or greater than 0 are being retained as such. So this is the example. So if it is f of minus 3, it becomes 0. F of minus 5, these are negative values. They are just transformed into 0. And if it is a positive, the same value is retained. And if it is 5, 5 is retained. So this layer removes every negative value from the filtered image and replaces it with the respective zeros. So this is done to avoid the value from summing up to 0. Suppose if we have lots of such minus value, probably that will ultimately affect the total summation when we go for summing the values. So, so this is the final output for first filter, and for the given input, we apply 3 filters, and we have got 3 features being extracted. So we have 3 feature map, and we take each of this feature map, and then we apply this pooling. You know what is pooling? Now in this case, we apply a max pooling. If I just go by 2 by 2, from each of this 2 by 2, I choose the max value, and that will be stored respectively in the corresponding places. So when I apply this max pooling on the output of output of the first feature map that I have got out of the first filter. So when I take this will be the main pooled value. I apply the max pooling, and I get this information. After ReLU, this is getting converted like this. So like this, I am going to do the same thing for the remaining 2 feature maps. So this is a kind of consolidation of what we have discussed so far. We have taken the input image, we applied the convolution operation. This is followed by an activation function. Then we perform pooling. Now, whatever be the value that you got out of this convolution operation after activation function, after pooling, will give us this. So we started with an image of size this, right? But after we perform this operation, now we are left with feature map of size 4 cross 4. But if I want to still reduce the size, I am going to repeat the operation again. So I take the input image. This is one set of operation I have done, convolution operation, ReLU, and then pooling. Now for this operation, I am going to supply this as the input. So this is going to serve as the input. So then I repeat it again, convolution, ReLU, and then pooling. So this is going to give us 2 cross 2 from each feature map. I mean, a feature map of size 2 cross 2. So after I perform this operation, I'm left with the features of size 2 cross 2. This is for filter 1, this is for filter 2, and this is for filter 3. So now I have a 2D feature map with respect to each and every filter for filter 1, filter 2, and filter 3. And this two-dimensional representation is going to get flattened. So this is what we call as 2D to 1 dimension. So this is the 1 dimension list representation where I just flatten this. So 1 comes here, 0.55, then 0.55, and then 0.1. Likewise, I flatten this, so I have got 1 dimensional representation. So this 1 dimensional representation is going to serve as the input for the fully connected layer. So what is the inference the model will get out of this flattened 1 dimensional representation of data? Now, the model is going to understand if an image has to be recognized as X, then it is supposed to have in the flattened vector 1 in the first place, then 1 in the 4th place, 1 in the 5th place, and then 1 in the 10th place, and 1 in the 11th place. So when you give an image, and when the image happens to have the feature of X, then the assumption or the mapping function that is formulated by the CNN is that the X is going to be represented by 5 ones in first place, 4th place, 5th place, 10th place, and 11th place, right? When we apply the same operation for this O, then with respect to this X, it is the pattern, and for O, it is going to be 2nd place, 3rd place, 9th place, and 10th place. We have ones, 2nd, 3rd, then this is 9th place, and then yeah, no, I think it is 7, 8, 9, 7th place, and then 10th place. Yeah. So this is mismatching. So computing the input vector for X as well as O, this is given. So what will happen now? Now, when an image is given, right, it is going to calculate what should be the probability of classifying a given object. Suppose if for X it is going to, the probability is going to be say 90, because as we calculate the same kind of pattern for a given new input image, the representation can be anything. See, out of these 5 ones, it can be just 4 ones, or it can be even 6 ones. So when we compare with respect to the positions, it need not be 100% correct. So it just, the model just goes for computing the probability of having right ones in the right places. So it will be say 0.91, and for the same image, if the probability is going to be 0.51 for O, right? So it concludes that the probability of a given image to be X is higher, 91%, whereas for O it is 51%. The model concludes that the given object is, given image is X. So all of these things put together, given input image, we perform the convolution operation. Please remember, when we do the subsampling, here there are different gray level representations, right? Each one refers to filter and the corresponding feature map. So we can perform any number of convolution operations subsampling, then we go for fully connected representation. So this is about AlexNet. There are good number of good collections of CNN available, which are readily available for transfer learning. One such net is AlexNet. This is popularized convolutional neural network by Alex Krizhevsky and at another his team. And this was introduced in the year 2012. In the year 2012, ImageNet, which is they have come out with a consortium where they try to go in for identifying the best convolutional neural network models which work well on multi-class classification. So this consortium every year or every other year, they go for conducting or holding competitions and then try to come out with new collections of networks or the existing network being modified with multiple features. So in 2012, the ImageNet ISLV-BRC challenge was like this model was able to outperform the state-of-art classification by reducing the error from 26% to 16%. This was the achievement by AlexNet. So first introduced the concept of a deeper, bigger stacked convolution neural network. So what is deeper? As you have more number of hidden layers, the model is called as deeper neural network. So what is stacked? I think you must have seen here. Here, what do? I just stack one layer over the other, right? I have done one set of convolution, then I go for another set of convolution. This is what we call a stacking. So by using all these possibilities, they were able to come out with a better convolution neural network, which could work on different types of classifications. Then Google Net, VGGNet, these are just variants of CNN that is introduced by the respective developers and which works better on a specific set of classification or identification. So this is ResNet. So I think I'm done with my presentation. I'll be happy to, get questions, or if you want to clarify anything, like I'm ready now. Yes. Nice. Yes.
Any questions, participants?
Thank you, sir.
No, madam. We'll say any questions.
Yes. Yeah, please go ahead.